To all the drivers out there delivering holiday cheer across our great country, season's greetings and a huge thank you from the Allen Lund Company.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Reddick.
What are the funding problems behind the truck parking crisis? How does it affect safety? And can technology help solve the problems involved? Those questions and more were answered at a recent meeting of the National Coalition on Truck Parking. I'll talk with OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. It was another successful year for OOIDA's Truckers for Troops telethon. We sit down with OOIDA staff members to discuss the total, where the money goes, and the success of this campaign over the past 17 years. And finally, California wanted to require that more than half of all heavy-duty trucks sold in the state by the year 2035 emit zero emissions. The EPA gave them the green light, and that's precisely the track we're on right now. But groups like OOIDA are throwing up speed bumps, hoping to stall or even stop the rule. Paul Torlina, OOIDA's advocacy counsel, joins the program to update us on how the legal battle is shaping up. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today. A bill that would hamper the Environmental Protection Agency's ability to set emission standards has passed the House. The CARS Act seeks to prohibit the EPA from issuing any mandate that would require the use of a specific engine technology or limit the availability of new vehicles based on engine type. It's in response to the EPA's proposed rule from May, which sets more stringent emission standards for light-duty and medium-duty vehicles. The standards would phase in over model years 2027 through 2032, marking a shift toward electric vehicles. The CARS Act passed the House on Wednesday by a vote of 221 to 197. 5 Democrats crossed the aisle to vote yes. Now attention turns to the Senate, where a companion piece of legislation was introduced in October. The Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association supports the efforts to limit the EPA's reach. In a letter of support signed by OOIDA President Todd Spencer, the association said clean air is a priority for everyone, but any new regulations must ensure that vehicles are reliable and affordable for professional truckers. The letter added that the EPA's regulatory blitz isn't taking small business truckers and an overwhelming number of concerns into account, naming the absence of a national charging infrastructure network for heavy-duty trucks as one hurdle. OOIDA wrote that the CARS Act being signed into law would help ensure the continued availability of engine technologies that small business truckers depend on for their livelihoods. But that's not likely anytime soon. The White House has promised to veto the bill if it makes it to President Biden's desk. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration is reminding states about existing policies regarding felony sexual assault. In a notice, FMCSA said that regulations state that a person convicted of using a commercial motor vehicle to commit sexual assault must be disqualified from operating a vehicle that requires a commercial driver's license or commercial learner's permit. That phrase, using a CMV in the commission of an assault, could mean many things. For example, it could be a felony sexual assault that happens inside a commercial motor vehicle or one that's being towed. It could also be the use of a CMV to transport a victim to a place where a felony sexual assault is committed, or even using a CMV to conceal a felony sexual assault from public view. The FMCSA notice was intended for state courts and state driver's licensing agencies. No reason for the notice was given, but the agency did state that the safety of CMV operators is a critical aspect of its safety mission. The agency also noted that sexual assaults have occurred at truck stops, fueling stations, and in connection with CMV driver training as well. And then there were 43, as in 43 co-sponsors of the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act in the House. Representative Jeff Jackson of North Carolina added his support to the bill this week. It's truly a bipartisan effort. Jackson is one of 20 Democrats who have signed on to the bill. The other 23 are Republicans, as is the bill's main sponsor, Representative Mike Bost of Illinois, a longtime champion of this issue. As a reminder, the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act seeks to pump $755 million over 3 years into the construction of new publicly available and free truck parking sites nationwide. There's also a companion bill of the same name in the Senate. It currently has 12 co-sponsors. To urge your elected representatives in Congress to sign on and get the bill moving, check out fightingfortruckers.com. And here's some more evidence to support your case if you do make that call. Police in a suburb of Indianapolis have started cracking down on trucks parked on interstate on- and off-ramps. 13 News reports that Greenwood police started handing out tickets this week. Officers had been patrolling Interstate 65 for the past couple months, issuing warnings and informing truck drivers that parking on ramps in Indiana is illegal. Now they're writing tickets, which come with a $150 fine. Greenwood police say it's a safety issue, but made no mention of the ongoing truck parking shortage nationwide. One truck driver interviewed by 13 News made that point exactly. He said there are times that truckers can't make it to the next truck stop, whether it be due to drowsiness or hours of service limits. A city of about 18,000 people just outside the state capital of Illinois is blaming GPS systems, not truckers, for a series of incidents that have caused tens of thousands of dollars in damage in recent years. Officials in Jacksonville, Illinois say the problem started about 10 years ago when the city put in new entrances downtown that feature narrow lanes with center islands. Despite lane restrictions, the city says semis keep trying to drive through the area. Some can't make it through, though, and either hit something or drive through the center island, all of which is causing damage. But Jacksonville officials are not blaming the truck drivers. At a recent city council meeting, city official John Green said GPS systems are leading them down roads they shouldn't. WLDS radio reports that instead of ticketing truckers, they're putting up new signs to steer truckers elsewhere. If that doesn't work, the city could start ticketing truck drivers, but says they won't do that. Instead, they might just remove the center islands. A truck driver in Memphis was shaken up but not hurt when an attempted cargo theft led to shots being fired earlier this week. Memphis police say it happened early Wednesday morning. The trucker told police he was asleep in his cab but woke up when he felt movement coming from his trailer. When he went to investigate, he found several men pulling out boxes of frozen chicken and loading them into their vehicles. Police say when the truck driver confronted the suspects, one of them attempted to rob him and shot at him several times as he ran away. The trucker wasn't hit. Memphis police say several suspects were involved in the incident. 2 of them were seen on surveillance video, but as of right now, nobody has been arrested. The Truckload Carriers Association is still accepting nominations for its Professional Drivers of the Year awards, but not for long. The deadline to nominate someone is this Friday, December 8th. Nominees should show a commitment to safety, demonstrate leadership on and off the road, and contribute meaningfully to the success of their companies or to the industry. They also must be nominated and employed by a TCA carrier member. In the end, 5 drivers will be named, each getting $20,000 in award money, along with other perks. The winners will be recognized in March at TCA's annual convention in Nashville, Tennessee. And finally, a company that specializes in connecting truck drivers with carriers has launched an online petition. They're trying to get Mattel to create a trucker Barbie. TransForce staffing and recruiting notes that over the years, Barbie has tried out more than 200 careers, from Air Force pilot and astronaut to race car driver and many more in between. She's done it all, but she's never been a truck driver. TransForce started up an online petition to make it happen. The company says they want to recognize the women who make up the trucking industry and educate girls about the career possibility. That's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. Do you have a news tip? Maybe you have a comment about something you heard on the air, or maybe you just have a question about something happening in trucking. Email us at landlinenow@ooida.com. Again, that email address is landlinenow@ooida.com. Next, I'll discuss the recent meeting of the National Coalition on Truck Parking with OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. Ashley Blackford talks with 3 OOIDA staffers about this year's Truckers for Troops telethon, and Scott Thompson covers California's new emission regulations with OOIDA's Paul Torlina. We'll be back in a moment. I'm Mark Rettig, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Control your toll costs and eliminate tolling headaches with Prepass Tolls. Prepass Tolls means toll volume discounts. Just one invoice for all tolls and fewer violations. Call 877-878-5970 or go to prepass.com.
Attention all truckers, Dean Michael, the tax doctor here. I want to talk to you about those dreaded tax problems. I know you want to keep on trucking and not even think about them, but let's face it, they're not going away all on their own. You need professional help. I've been helping truckers put their tax problems in the rearview mirror for years. I can help you too. Call me now for a free consultation at 888-557-4020 or go to mytaxhelpmd.com. It's like I always say, keep your eyes on the road, I'll keep mine on the IRS. 888-557-4020.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
The National Coalition on Truck Parking met recently to discuss the latest on the issue. Welcome back to Landline Now. This is Regulatory Roundup, and I'm Mark Rettig. I'm joined, as always, by OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. Jay, thanks for joining me.
Good to be back.
The comments and discussion at this event generally broke down into three categories, kind of funding, safety, and technology. So let's start with funding, because that's what's needed to make the whole thing happen. It starts with the administrator of the Federal Highway Administration, who made some opening comments that dealt in part with the issue of funding. What did he have to offer?
Yeah, he mentioned that there are several grant programs currently available for truck parking projects. In recent years, we have actually finally seen some of these federal grants be more designated towards truck parking projects. And we heard from some of the representatives who have received grants. The Columbia Port Commission in Louisiana, they got the port down there received more than $15 million in a Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity, the RAISE grants, and a $500,000 grant from the Department of Homeland Security, and those projects include a truck parking facility that adds spaces for 50 trucks. And we've seen a few other similar projects be allocated at DOT over the past couple of years. Fortunately, the problem remains that there are no specific grant programs that specifically are designated for truck parking projects. So on one hand, I think given the efforts from stakeholders across the trucking industry, we have seen more attention paid to give out some money, but it's nowhere near enough the funding that is necessary to really put a dent in this nationwide truck parking crisis. Certainly the legislation that has been introduced in the House and Senate would go a long way, over $750 million for federal and state projects to actually increase truck parking capacity. So that legislation continues to gain momentum and work its way through Congress. We saw the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee approve the legislation earlier this year. Unfortunately, still has not been passed in either chamber. So in the meantime, we are kind of relying on DOT to allocate funding in their existing grant areas. Do want to see some more specific capacity improvement projects come down the pike.
You mentioned the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act, and of course that is a big issue right now. Your colleague Bryce Mungen gave a presentation on that at this event. Can you offer a few highlights of what he had to say? Yeah,
he mentioned, while we've put in a lot of work, there's still a lot of hard work to do. And it's kind of frustrating in some ways because this has been an issue where there's pretty much complete support across not only the trucking industry stakeholder groups, and we've got OOIDA leading the way, certainly ATA, the Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance, National Association of Truck Stop Operators, just to name a few. This is has been an effort, has been legislation that has wide support. And it's also legislation that has bipartisan support among Congress. And you've got co-sponsors from both the Democratic side and the Republican side. And as I mentioned, it's been introduced in both chambers. So that's been a challenge, and kind of the biggest issue we've seen right now is getting the issue to the top of lawmakers' priority list, getting this to the leadership level, where the leadership members in both the House and Senate really are more educated about the truck parking issue, and that's really something we've been focused on over the past year or so. So continue to bang the drum on Capitol Hill. Certainly, I think our efforts are being heard over at DOT and Federal Highway, and I think as we heard throughout the presentations earlier this week, a lot at the state level, and that's really an area where these truck parking projects can do a better job of targeting areas where truck parking is needed, get some of the funding that they have from DOT to really build more spaces. And I think we heard from California, Texas, and Georgia, as well as some other groups that are working on this widespread problem. And that was another, I think, sentiment that truck parking remains a big problem nationwide.
You've mentioned earlier the grants that are available already before the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act. Why are we not seeing more states take advantage of the money that's already on the table?
Couple issues there. One is kind of, education on the availability of these truck parking grants. I think it's only been within the last couple of years where some of these state governments that are applying for grants really are aware of the truck parking program, really are starting to learn that DOT does have money that can go to some of these projects. Then, of course, there's a whole host of transportation issues that these states and local and city governments are trying to work on. And unfortunately, truck parking projects can raise some opposition to the not in my backyard crowd. And so that's always kind of a push and pull when you're just talking about truck parking with some of these state and local officials, whether that's at the administration level or at the elected state and local representative level too. So it kind of goes both ways there. But again, I think these meetings that we're having at DOT level, the support for the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act are really starting to gain momentum where we're hearing a lot about the facts and the situations that a lot of these local officials are more aware of now than they were, say, 10 years ago.
There are some barriers, and especially on that local level. One of the ones they mentioned is the NIMBY problem.
Yeah.
Can you kind of relate what the discussion was about that?
So these are local citizens who don't want to see a truck stop or a truck parking area be constructed near where they live. And a lot of that is just due to lack of education and folks who don't know the contributions that the trucking industry bring to their economy, to their neighborhood, and how reliant everyone is across the country on truckers bringing food and medical supplies and other items to the doorstep. So again, is another frustrating aspect of our efforts. But we really do need grassroots efforts from our side in support of this issue, and really educating lawmakers at the federal level, educating lawmakers at the local and state level too, to kind of, we know they're hearing from these NIMBY folks who are opposing any truck parking projects. They need to be hearing from the people that it's going to help as well.
Second area of discussion was safety. And I'm wondering if you can relate what some of the safety issues are that they discussed that are connected to parking.
Yeah, we heard from FMCSA Administrator Robin Hutchinson, who has, I think to her credit, pretty much every time she is making a public statement or a public appearance, mentions that truck parking is a major priority for DOT, for the Federal Highway Administration, and for the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. She said, a lack of safe truck parking contributes to driver fatigue, contributes to them spending excessive time searching for a safe place to park at the end of their day. And that's really problematic, not only for the safety aspects that not only Administrator Hutchinson has mentioned, but DOT Secretary Pete Buttigieg has mentioned many a time. And certainly a safety factor, but also an efficiency factor too. When you count out all these hours that drivers have to spend looking for parking, is time that they can't spend on the road getting to their next destination.
The third area was technology, and this kind of splits into two areas. The one that I thought was interesting that I haven't heard as much about before is what they're doing at the federal level and state level in terms of using technology to research truck parking problems. What are some of the things they're doing at the federal level on that?
Yeah, mapping truck parking areas and different aspects in terms of safety as well, looking at parking behavior and the safety impacts of parking shortages. FMCSA has been working on a study relating to crash data in and around truck parking areas. In Texas, the state DOT has been using data to communicate parking needs to executive leadership and to the department districts as well. And, again, we continue to see funding go, I think, a little more so on the technology side versus the capacity side. And, we also heard from representatives from the Kentucky Transportation Cabinet Division of Motor Carriers who kind of have alluded to a lot of the problems we hear about from drivers regarding technology, that Kentucky has 12 sites using a truck parking availability information system. And on average, these areas are over-reporting the truck parking availability by 25%. So this is kind of an example we hear about all the time. If 20 spots were available, the technology is reporting that 25 are available. And when these drivers get to these areas, they're finding that there's not the space that they thought was going to be open. So that's a huge problem as we see some of this funding kind of continue to go more towards the technology signage area things. We need to have more money going to improving capacity, building new spaces.
Well, let's go on to another topic in the couple of minutes we have left here. North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum spoke out on FMCSA's new rule limiting the length of regulatory relief during emergencies. What is the new rule FMCSA is putting out? I know it goes into effect here very quickly.
Yeah, this is a final rule that was announced a few weeks ago relating to the emergency declaration relief that motor carriers and drivers are granted once a regional emergency declaration is announced. And really the main concern we have is restricting the current 30-day window now down to 14 days. And there were some other amendments relating to the scope of regulations that the relief would apply to, rather than whole bunch of federal motor carrier safety regulation parts and chapters, really going to be focused on the hours of service, which is by far the most necessary. But this 14-day window can be really problematic. And this rule is set to go into effect next week on December 12th and is going to really restrict those emergency exemptions to a 14-day window. Of course, FMCSA, if needed, can extend that window, but that can create oftentimes confusion on when the extensions go into effect, some of the processes for those extensions to be granted. So, we really haven't seen any safety problems with the 30-day window that's been in effect for years. FMCSA acknowledged that in the final rules. So we filed a petition with the National Propane and Gas Association to really kind of maintain the rules that were previously in effect, especially this 30-day window in timing. The governor, I think, expressed some concerns about federal overreach, and that one of the things that stuck out to me is that in the 28 emergency waivers that Governor Burgum has issued in his 7 years in office, 19 of those were issued for a period of more than 14 days. And it's just the unpredictability of these emergencies that we don't want to see any problems kind of unnecessarily be created with a shortened window.
Okay, well, Jay, we're out of time, but thank you for the information.
Sure thing.
I've been talking with Jay Grimes of OOIDA. Landline Now will be back in a moment.
Today's rising costs affect everyone. Replace your harmonic damper with a genuine Vibertech TVD viscous damper to prevent costly repairs and downtime. Keep your money in your pocket and your truck on the road with Vibertech TVD. Recommended replacement at 500,000 miles or 15,000 hours.
Ready to make more money? Use a better load board. For a limited time, get 50% off TruckStop Load Board Pro. Just go to truckstop.com/go and enter promo code READY2023 when you purchase Load Board Pro.
Landline Now, welcome back. Sylvia Dodson, Norita Taylor, and Nikki Johnson with OOIDA join me in studio now. Ladies, thank you so much for coming in.
You bet. Absolutely. Our pleasure.
We have a very exciting topic to talk about, and that is Truckers for Troops. OOIDA held the 17th annual telethon to raise money. Sylvia, I'm going to start with you. You are the one with the exciting news, with the total of how much was raised. Talk to me about that.
Well, we raised $27,986 this year.
Wow.
So
Yay.
we beat out last year almost $8,000. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Now, for those who aren't aware, tell me a little bit about what Truckers for Troops is.
Basically, it is OOIDA's way to bring our members in closer to the vets because there's so many of them out there anyway. And it was a way to connect our members with the soldiers and vets that are out there and be able to boost OOIDA and get us on the map.
Yeah, basically, we know that our members want to show support for troops and for veterans, and this was a perfect way to do that while at the same time encouraging membership and renewals all at the same time. We know that they have connections, like you said, Sylvia, either they were in the military or they have connections, and this is a great way to channel that support and at the same time raise a little money to help spread some good things for those that are in need.
That's what I meant to say.
I just wanted to add, I always have to get in my extra 2 cents.
I appreciate you.
And speaking of money, Norita, can you tell me, where does the money go?
Sure. So it goes to a couple of different things. We, of course, still continue the tradition of care packages, which we'll have Nikki cover off the details on that. But we do send care packages to those serving in other areas. But we also have channeled that support to Veterans Community Project, which is headquartered in Kansas City, but they are branching out gradually to be a national project. Their goal is to be in every state. And what the Veterans Project is, Veterans Community Project, has a combination of things. They have walk-in services for all veterans, and then they also have a campus of tiny houses for homeless veterans as well.
And Norita, when everyone is listening to this, the check presentation will have already happened. Talk to me about that. OOIDA visited the VCP.
Sure. So basically, like you said, by the time everyone hears this, we'll have been down there and we will have dropped off all of the donated goods that we've been gathering here at headquarters, which includes lots of pantry items for the commissary, as well as household items for those who live in the tiny houses. That's a variety of things. It could be anything. It could be household goods, things to cook with, all brand new items, of course. And then we'll have presented a check for $10,000, and we will look forward to seeing the good that does for the Veterans Community Project.
All right. And as you mentioned, the care packages, Nikki, I want to ask you about those. Can you tell me what are in those, and how does that kind of all work?
So we receive addresses from many of our members, also some of our coworkers here at OOIDA. We provide comforts of home, different snacks, over-the-counter medicines, games, just things to bring a little bit of home to them overseas. Some of the things that we packed recently were beef jerky, emergency, so they stay well, hand cream, mixed nuts.
Pistachios.
Yes.
They love their pistachios.
Yes. I did include those this time as well. Hand cream. I put in some Tootsie Pops, Blow Pops, things that would travel well, but just add a little fun and home.
And I know we heard from a few veterans who had been overseas and received these packages. I mean, these aren't just like shoebox.
Oh, no.
And talk to me about what it's been like to hear the reaction from what that's like from them to receive one of these.
They are so excited. These boxes weigh about 60 pounds.
Wow.
So this isn't just a box for one person. This is for sharing. Up to probably 10, 12 people. And I think the best stories for me are I recently received an email from a past recipient whom is higher up in the service. I believe he's Navy now, or Navy. And he wanted to make sure that some of his comrades received the same type of support that he did because he remembered our care package. And he said it was so impactful that he wanted to see if that was something we were still doing.
Wow.
That's cool.
Awesome.
Yeah. It was a great story.
And you just sent a few packages recently, is that right?
I did, yes. We that was one of them that had reached out. So we sent over about 12 to 15 care packages over to Navy. We've not heard back yet from them, but it does take some time for those boxes to get there.
And are we always looking for names and addresses?
Absolutely. We are always looking for names, addresses, so please call or email. You can email me directly at Nikki, NIKKI_Johnson at OOIDA.com. And we are more than happy to be able to provide those care packages.
All right. Now, you have all been around OOIDA for many years. You all look young, but you've all been here for a few years, I know. I want to hear from each of you to talk about the connection that you've seen over the years between truck drivers and those who serve, and just kind of the compassion and passion towards wanting to support our military.
Our members love our soldiers and our veterans. Most of them have them. They have kids. They have grandkids that are a part of it. It's grown through the years. They may have just gotten out, and now 10 years or 15, 20 years later, maybe their kids are in it now. And so they continue that heartfelt push to always be a part of their community. And we're able to open that door. So,
well, and I know I'm speaking to the choir, but the trucking community is such a giving community anyway, and veterans are very close to their heart because, as we've said, many of them are veterans or have veterans in their families, and so it just makes sense.
It's a good fit.
Yeah, it is.
It's a win-win.
What I hope that listeners understand is when it comes to especially the Veterans Community Project, the things that they're doing out there, I think that if they, I hope that they understand that this really is going a long way in helping people, not just if they're homeless, but they have other services there. And they kind of fill in the gaps of what the VA can't do. And I'm not, I'm not an expert on the Veterans Administration, but my understanding is that they can't do everything.
Right.
And so the VCP is there to kind of fill in those gaps, pick up the ball. They can do anything for any veteran, whether you're homeless or no matter what the status of your departure from the branch of the military you were in, no matter what, they are there to help you with all kinds of services. And the thing that I find most fascinating is that for the people who do live there as a resident in the tiny homes, they're allowed to keep their pets. And this is the reason this is important to understand is that very few shelters anywhere of any kind allow pets at all. And they know that it's important that people who have a bond with a pet, that they be able to keep them, because otherwise sometimes they're not seeking help at all for their homelessness or any other services. And that's a really unique thing in getting people off the streets.
Yes.
Well, and our members have their animals in their vehicles in their trucks that they travel with, and they understand. because we get all kinds of donations for the animals.
That's
you
right.
know, from dog foods and cat foods, and I mean they've got all kinds of things in those trucks. I mean, I've heard of potbelly pigs, I've heard of birds, I've heard of reptiles. So same thing.
Yes.
And Sylvia, I want to ask you about this. We, of course, had the telethon here at OOIDA, but the association also did other things kind of among the staff. Talk to me about a few of the things that were done.
Well, we did a barrel decoration, and each department picked a barrel and decorated it patriotically, and we filled it full of goodies for everybody, and we've put some enticing things out there for people to bring donations in, but the barrels turned out really great though. They all we had a tank, we had a tiny house that was totally outrageous. I loved it, and we had patriotic with flags coming out some, and the kids did one from the daycare. It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a great way to get the employees around here involved in the project.
We've received so many donations that it's going to be a great truckload to take and present to them.
Were either of you surprised by the amount of donations? Of course, I mean, it's been a hard year financially, I think, for everyone. Were you surprised at all by the amount of donations that came in?
I'm surprised every year. Every year, from the donations to the amount that we collect. Every year, I get surprised thinking that it's been a bad year. Oh my gosh, they came through again.
What are we going to do?
They came
what are we
through
going
again.
to do?
Yeah, let's push.
We always come through, though.
Yep. Our guys always come through.
We're very compassionate about our veterans, and when we rally together, we always seem to pull through for the needs that we need.
And I hope people know that the campaign is over, but you can donate anytime throughout the year on our website.
Yes.
All you have to, and every I know it's an old saying, but every little bit counts.
Yes.
But that adds up over the year, and we do get trickles in on those. So I encourage you to go to the website. We have a page dedicated to Truckers for Troops with a donate button right there, and making it easy peasy for you. So anytime.
And all the money goes to help.
Yes.
There are no overhead costs. All of the money goes to care packages or VCP.
All right. And I'm sure one of you knows this story, and I've heard it a couple of times, but I love hearing it. The first year that we did this, was the goal like
$5,000.
5,000? Talk to me about that story.
We blew that out of the water.
Yeah, we way blew it out of the water.
I kind of thought we would. I kind of thought we would. But.
Yeah. And Jim, it was so funny because when we walked in, Jim was like, well, we collected more than 5,000. He goes, well, what'd you collect? I think we were at 54,000
Yeah,
or
I was
something.
thinking 52.
And he goes, what? I mean, his mouth dropped to the floor. And he was like, what?
It was amazing.
It was amazing, yes.
Yeah, we knew we had a good idea.
Yeah, from that point on, we just blew.
How does it feel after 17 years to see the support continue to come in year after year?
Heartfelt. My heart. It's my heart.
It's encouraging, and we know it's a sign we know to keep going.
Yep.
Yeah.
Keep going. Expand, grow the program.
Sylvia, I wanted to ask you about this OOIDA membership deal in honor of OOIDA's 50th anniversary. That's only good for a couple more weeks, is that right?
Yes, ma'am. It's good until December 31st, 2023. So please call. And
Time is ticking.
All
right.
2 for $50.
2 for 50. Yes,
hard
for
to
100.
beat.
Tell me about what the deal is.
The deal is you can get 2 years for $50. That's the 2 for $50 that we've been had going all year long to celebrate the 50th anniversary.
How does it feel? I guess I'm curious, either anyone who wants to answer. How does it feel closing out the 50th year? It's been an exciting year. We've done a lot.
It's been a lot of fun. We've been busy this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Between the GBATs and MATs and all the shows and
the telethon and everything. It's been a great year. A lot of good stories coming in from the members too for reminiscing.
Yes, that's been nice to hear. All right, ladies, thank you so much for coming in.
You bet. Anytime.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
That was Sylvia Dodson, Narita Taylor, and Nikki Johnson talking about the Truckers for Troops telethon. For more information on the telethon or OOIDA, you can visit ooida.com. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. Stay tuned for more after this.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one, That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Welcome back to the program. You may remember all the way back to the spring of this year when the Environmental Protection Agency gave California the green light to implement regulations that require half of all new heavy-duty vehicles to be all electric by the year 2035. But groups like OOIDA are throwing out speed bumps, hoping to slow or even stop the measure from moving forward. Joining us with the details on how that's going is Paul Torlina, advocacy counsel for OOIDA. Paul, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. This is a complicated issue and one that we think it's worth revisiting, just to let people know that this is still out there, still looming. We report on these rulings, these decisions right off the bat. But again, it's important to note that the process does continue. With regard to this EPA waiver, OOIDA opposes the decision there, and I think we know why. But if you could tell us what the waivers mean and why exactly they are problematic in the eyes of OOIDA.
Well, I'll do my best. What the waivers mean is kind of a big general question. In the big picture, in the grand scheme of things, the EPA follows the Clean Air Act that is roughly 50 years old now, and there are regulations that the EPA issues under the Clean Air Act. And what they're trying to do with the waivers is a state can request a waiver so that they can put forth their own regulations that are not preempted by the Clean Air Act or EPA's regulations. So that's kind of the key to the whole story with these waivers, is that the EPA's regulations and the Clean Air Act are federal laws or regulations that preempt every state law that touches or concerns environmental issues or protections.
Yep.
So the only way around that for a state is to get a waiver so that they will not be preempted. That's what California's done here, is request a waiver from the Clean Air Act or the EPA's regulations relating to the Clean Air Act so that they can put their own in place relating to electric vehicles and their ability to control emissions.
And they are stricter than the federal regulations in this case, which is important to note.
That is correct. That is the key to what has caused this entire set of litigation. And I say set because there are 3 other cases besides the one that OOIDA is involved with. They're all seeking the same thing, which is a review by the United States Court of Appeals of the waiver granted to California by the EPA.
And the argument there that OOIDA, and I know you can speak obviously about that one better than the others, but the argument made by OOIDA and these other groups is what exactly? What is your case that you're trying to make, I suppose, in getting this waiver kind of thrown out?
Well, there's 3 main arguments that are being made, and the most probably influential or historically strong argument is to say that this is a case involving what's called a, quote, major question. And major questions are things that are related to what did Congress intend when they enacted a law. And so with the Clean Air Act, the argument that OOIDA and the other petitioners in the other cases are making, that's the primary leg to stand on, is Congress didn't authorize the EPA to grant waivers for electric vehicles. Congress authorized the EPA to exist to enforce the Clean Air Act in a way that reduces emissions from internal combustion engines, power plants that fire coal, things that produce atmospheric pollution is probably the best way to say it.
So, I mean, if I were to kind of summarize that into a little sentence or even a word, I suppose, it's overreach. Is that kind of the crux of the conversation here? Crux of the argument is that the EPA just doesn't have the authority to do this. Is that kind of the idea?
It is the idea. Overreach is probably a very good phrase for it, because what the major question doctrine says is that the Congress had to expressly say, EPA, you have this power. The argument here is that Congress didn't say a word about electric vehicles or anything like it when the Clean Air Act was passed.
And I think we should mention specifically, I mean, the stakes for this obviously are high for people in California. especially small business truckers who may not have the means to meet this target by 2035, or certainly not buy a new truck at that point. However, when you look at California and you look at the entire country, we've seen it before where if something happens in California, there are other states that pick up on it and start to follow down that trail as well. We've seen it with this issue specifically as well, too. Other states are kind of looking at the California model here and saying we're going to do that as well. Just talk a little bit about the stakes here. What's at stake with these legal cases, with these legal arguments, and trying to get this waiver, again, essentially thrown out? The stakes are high.
The stakes are extremely high, and California is typically the leader in environmental issues across the country. So as California goes, the U.S. goes typically with these kind of issues. What that does for truckers and small business owners is potentially puts them in the crosshairs of regulations from the state of California that are going to tell them when they can no longer drive an internal combustion engine vehicle, or when they might have to retrofit with equipment, replace power plants in existing trucks with battery or electric vehicle power plants instead of internal combustion. I mean, there's a whole can of worms here that could be opened up by the state of California that 49 other states are ready to say, boy, that sounds like a good idea. We should do the same thing. You mentioned the fact that there is some pushback here. We're seeing it, a legal pushback, I should say. OOIDA is one of the groups that is fighting this. There are other groups as well, and I think you mentioned that earlier. Are their arguments essentially the same as what the association is trying to argue here? Are they coming from a different angle? Can you speak about what they're saying essentially? For the most part, the arguments they parallel one another. I don't want to call them exactly the same, but sure. If you had to say that if you want to look at the four cases, the issues line up very similarly for all the other cases that are involved here. I would not say that there's one case that there's just a separate issue that OOIDA is looking at and saying, oh boy, that doesn't apply to us. That's sure. Not necessarily what we're talking about here. Is there any precedent for this type of thing, previous cases that dealt with a similar issue that you're kind of looking back to and thinking this applies, to what we're talking about here? Are we in entirely new territory here with regard to this? It feels like there's probably some sort of precedent out there that you're pointing to. There's lengthy precedent, okay. And most of it is favorable. And the kind of the seminal case right now is called West Virginia versus Environmental Protection Agency, and that is a case that the U.S. Supreme Court decided in favor of the party opposing the EPA's action, saying that it was an overreach. I think it was a coal-fired plant, if I recall correctly off the top of my head, mm-hmm. But it was not a electric vehicle case by any means, but the arguments are similar to that case, and it's pretty easy to analogize the two and say, this is just like this case, Judge, when this eventually gets to argument stage in the appellate court or Supreme Court. I know the legal process is not exactly swift. We do have a little bit of time here, I suppose. 2035 is when these things are supposed to go into full effect in California. But do you have any sense of what the timeline looks like, maybe over the next several months or even the next couple of years? I mean, what's going to happen, I suppose, in the near term? I think we're looking at a minimum of probably 12 to 18 months before there's any determination on all these cases when you kind of bundle them together. Sure. The problem for truckers is they sit in each day that pulls off the calendar and each hour that clicks off of the clock, that's another hour or day that you are closer to having to comply with this rule if it's going to be upheld in the state of California. And then if you're not in California, is it coming your way in another state? Yeah, it's a complicated issue. This did happen earlier this year, but I think it's worth mentioning that the fight is really never ending with these types of things, and especially now with this case there in California, OOIDA continues to fight it. Paul, a pleasure. We appreciate your time, your expertise, and going to bat for the truckers out there on this issue. My pleasure. Our thanks to Paul Torlina of OOIDA, and our thanks to you for listening. That's our show for today, but we've got another one just around the corner. We hope to see you then.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad.
A son.
A husband.
Wife.
I'm a writer.
Photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing.
My kids.
Chrome.
And I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us! Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.